Before the establishment of the Motion Picture Association of America, there was a film production code created by the Production Code Association, which dictated what was suitable to show within a film and what was not. These various guidelines were called don'ts and be carefuls. If a film followed these established rules, they would receive the PCA's seal of approval and then have permission to be shown within theaters. When the PCA's code proved too outdated to continue its use, the MPAA was then established. The MPAA rates films according to a parental guidance structure called the Film Rating System. The ratings they give include G, General Audiences, PG, Parental Guidance Suggested, PG-13, Parents Strongly Cautioned, R, Restricted, and NC-17, No one 17 and under admitted. While originally intended to help alert parents to mature content within film, such as sex, violence, language, and more, the system has since aroused various adverse side effects that instead make it an ineffective guide for parents. Instead of basing ratings solely off of content, research shows that high-status actors or directors can influence a film's rating. For example, take Leonardo DiCaprio, one of Hollywood's stars, and put him in a film directed by James Cameron. This film, The Titanic, was less likely to be rated R, and might instead be rated PG-13. This is the category that receives the largest audience attendance. While nudity, sexual content, and violence during a traumatic shipwreck are all themes within Titanic, the film still receives a PG-13 rating. Well, what's so bad about that? In fact, this type of bias for high-status actors and directors over those who are less known creates an unfair disadvantage for independent films. These films, with the necessary stars, are more susceptible to get a rating of R or even NC-17 instead of the desired PG-13. How does this affect the idea of informing parents about mature content? If other factors, such as actors and directors, can influence what rating a film receives, then it is clear that the content is not adequately evaluated. Parents may unknowingly subject their children to material that is too mature for them, all because the rating system has various biases affecting decisions. Not only are there biases when it comes to famous people, but also ones relating to content. Specifically, violence gets a more lenient rating than sexual content. In the documentary, This Film Is Not Yet Rated, director Kirby Dick asserts that when a film with violence is compared to another film with an equal level of sexual content, the film with violence is likely to get a lower rating than the film with sexual content. What's the matter with this? With favoritism for violence over sex, it is difficult to tell whether a film has been rated based solely on its content or on someone else's moral standards. In order for a parental guidance system, such as the rating system, to be effective, there has to be no bias for one type of mature content over another. By allowing more violence into a film at a lower rating, parents might take their children to see a film that is unsuitable for them. With violence in mind, leniency for fantasy violence over realistic violence can become a major issue. Take, for example, the family favorite Harry Potter, in particular the 8th installment, directed by David Yates, which received a PG-13 rating by the MPAA. In the film, violence and even death occurs through the use of magical wands. Now consider this. What if those wands were no longer wands, but were guns? And these children were wielding guns at one another and killing each other with them. Likely, the rating would not remain PG-13. Other examples of this type of fantasy violence occurs in the films Lord of the Rings and even The Hunger Games, in which children are killing children, yet the actual killing is never shown and only implied. Fantasy violence, while admittedly different from realistic violence, is still just that, violence. Why does the rating system allow children to see violence done by wands or elves, but not by guns and people? Is this in fact an accurate way to measure what rating a film receives? Although fantasy violence does not look the same, children are still being exposed to mature content that may not be suitable. Parents are then misinformed about the level of violence within a film and may unwillingly make poor decisions in regards to films for their children. The intent by the MPAA to establish a parental guidance structure through a film rating system is a noble one. However, it now seems that the amount of adverse side effects calls for a new way to inform parents about film content. What are some solutions? The most effective and basic way to get accurate information about adult content in a film is simply to research the film. While this may sound like a lot of work just to decide what to take your children to see, it does not mean it isn't worth it. Going onto sites such as kidsinmind.com, commonsensemedia.org, and pluggedin.com can help. Each of these sites are designed to help parents accurately decide whether or not to show their children a film despite the given ratings. Plugged In is a site that breaks down the content into categories as specific as the spiritual content and drug and alcohol use within the film. These sites offer an alternative to frustrated parents and those parents who are now aware of the inaccuracies within the system. Take a little time to research a movie before passing judgment upon it. After all, it could be rated lower or even higher than it deserves. Now you can make the choice to either follow the rating system or discover your own.